right now on Bears Unleashed, brought to you by IGS Energy. The Bears couldn't keep pace with the Packers at Lambeau and suffered their first defeat of the season. We'll break it down. David Montgomery was the game's silver lining as he zigged and zagged his way to 122 yards on the ground. Now, the Monsters of the Midway plan their attack against the Texans as Lovie Smith returns to Soldier Field. Plus, what's the one word you need to know before kickoff on Sunday afternoon? Find out next on Bears Unleashed. Welcome to Bears Unleashed, brought to you by IGS Energy. I'm Cassie Carlson, and it's a bounce-back week for the Bears after their 27-10 loss to the Packers. Now welcoming back Lovie Smith and the Houston Texans. Joining me, as always, here on Unleashed, we have Gabe Ramirez, Anthony Herron. How are we feeling? Are we recovered from Sunday Night Football at Lambeau?
I'm not embarrassed.
Not embarrassed?
I think that was, to me, the best takeaway, right? When I came into the season, it was like, let's make sure we're playing good football. We're not necessarily embarrassed. And I think we did that. It showed that we were a few steps away, but we weren't out of the ball game altogether. You know what I'm saying?
That's the standard for this season. Don't embarrass yourself. Yeah. And I think beyond that, though, this coming game will be a good test for how they respond, because there's good reason for the Bears players in that locker room to feel like there was more meat on the bone. There were some opportunities that were missed there against Green Bay. You know, down multiple scores a lot, but had an opportunity to make it a one-score game late. You didn't come through in that regard, really on either side of the ball. So now what's the response this week? That's one of the things you have to test as a growing locker room.
All right, well, let's just get straight into it, starting with the offense and Justin Fields, because the one number that's been highlighted all week is those 11 pass attempts he had in Green Bay. There's been some criticism of it. What does that number reflect to you, Gabe?
Well, I think I'm at that play in particular, you know, that was nice one, right? The play action, he was wide open, had his feet underneath him, and you thought you were going to get a little bit more of that throughout the game. But, I mean, I don't know. It's like we asked for that game plan all last year. Run the ball, establish the run. Bears did that from the very beginning. So I don't want to say, it sucks we didn't throw the ball a lot, because then Lou Getty would say, hey, I called 19 plays. Right. We ran 40-something. I was there, just we didn't get the result we wanted. And so, I mean, overall, I like the idea to run the ball. And I mean, listen, like Lou Getty said, and I ride with Lou Getty, Cassie. If I got to throw 50 times to win, that's what we're going to do. If I got to run the ball 50 times to win, that's what we're going to do.
We know, just because he's taller than most offensive coordinators. That was enough. Lou Getty won you over. He had you at hello just based off his height. But I think beyond that, one thing that came out of game one, where I was hoping to see some growth, was to at least call a few more shot plays. We did see that. And I think to your point, Gabe, the fact that the pass plays were called, it just only ended up in 11 attempts. It's one of those things that folks had a little bit of time to kind of get their minds wrapped around during the week here. But in the end, when you have a mobile quarterback, he's going to look to run on occasion. When you have a guy who looks to extend the play at times and maybe doesn't read it quite as quickly because he's inexperienced, then some of those pass plays are going to end up being checkdowns, being sacks, being QB runs. So overall, the balance wasn't an issue for me running the pass. It was the sustaining of drives. And that's where the total picture of the Bears offense comes to account, in my opinion, Cassie. How do you go about sustaining drives, making sure you're converting on third downs, executing in those key moments?
So after you see the lack of pass attempts that were executed in that game, do you have any concern with where Justin Fields is at right now?
Got to be honest, I don't.
Yeah.
I don't. I mean, whenever I see him throw the ball, I see consistency. Granted, there are moments when he's moving outside of the pocket, so that's going to affect his throwing. However, when he does have his feet underneath him, he's got hitting guys in the chest. He's throwing lasers, and like you're right, he does take them shots down the field, and they said it, right? I think Coach Wannstedt said it this week when recapping the game. He used to call 2 big plays a half. I need 2 big plays a half. So I mean, you're in that space right there, and as long as you keep establishing the run and you set yourself up for that play action, it's not an issue for me whatsoever.
People wanted to kind of have it both ways. You know, early there was success running the football. Then the second quarter there wasn't. They kept going 3 and out, and everyone's like, oh, well, why'd you get away from the run? And then afterwards you look at the pass attempts after the game, and people are wondering, why didn't you throw it more? You can't have it both ways. The game plan as a whole was fine. Justin Fields' execution of it looked like a guy in his second year playing quarterback in the National Football League, and he was on a national stage. The biggest show in television faced up with one of the great quarterbacks of all time. So there's that direct comparison that's happening in real time. Aaron Rodgers versus Justin Fields. Aaron Rodgers looked like Aaron Rodgers. Justin Fields looked like a young quarterback. But his development arc is going to be fine. It takes a level of patience. This is overall a developing roster.
Let me ask you this, though, because I really felt like during the game, right, I feel like they could have done a little bit more to build his confidence early when we're talking about those pass plays. Where I look at the third drive of the game and I say to myself, right there, maybe we could have, built some confidence in Justin Fields to say, hey, you can pick us up on this 2nd and 10 instead of running the ball again on that 2nd down. I think there should have been moments like that where they could have picked up his confidence instead of saying, hey, second half, we need you to throw the ball, and now we got to do this. Like, do that earlier on to say, hey, we trust you, and we know you can get these yards.
Not forcing it.
Not forcing it, exactly.
Right. Well, David Montgomery was the highlight of this game, 15 carries for 122 yards. After a slow week 1, what did Montgomery prove to you this week?
I love the fact that he got north and south really quickly in this game. It's one of the things I talked to you guys about coming off of game number 1. The term I use is run through the smoke. Even when that crevice, that crease doesn't appear immediately, to continue your path north and south. It was a struggle for Montgomery earlier in his career. He was much more consistent with that last season. Game 1, not as much. Sunday Night Football, though, he was a guy who immediately advanced on the defense, and so that decisiveness as a runner, that helps set up the offensive line that much better, and it shows some of the special traits that David Montgomery does have as a ball carrier.
Yeah, you know what he saw? Khalil Herbert behind him like this. He's like, I gotta do something about this, and he did, and it felt good. And I didn't know they called him Demo. You heard Justin Fields. Justin Fields talking about him, calling him Demo. But he did, man. He looked decisive. He looked elusive. I mean, there were moments just on that run right there where it was like a 2nd and 10. They ran the ball. You did not think, you're like, what are they doing? They're going to pick up 4 or 5, and then he ends up getting the first down. So he looked really good, Cassie, for sure.
With the Houston Texans coming to town, head coach Lovie Smith returning to Soldier Field as well. They run a similar defense that the Bears currently play. How do you expect this offense to take advantage of that?
Yeah, it's got to be the dump off to David Montgomery, right? Granted, he showed everybody last year, hey, I can do this with my legs. But at the same time, Justin Fields can get him the ball because if they're going to put pressure, which they're going to try to do with their front 4, leave guys sitting back in that cover 2, that's going to leave that middle space kind of wide open. Would that be the recipe for some success right there, Ant?
It definitely can be. And you know, there are different ways of playing the cover 2 defense. The depth of the linebackers can vary a bit in that, but the safeties will be deep. Cole Kmet, I think, is a great possibility of having a nice game here as well, depending on the depth of the linebackers. We saw where Cole Kmet hasn't quite, gotten off this season yet, had a key drop the other night. And so whether or not the tight end position ends up being a bigger portion of this offense, it's going to need to be. And the potential for it is there. Look for Justin Fields, I think, to maybe target Cole Kmet a few times here.
All right, well, it's now time for the Clean Energy player to watch. Who is the one Bears player you think will make the biggest impact against the Texans?
I'm going to say Jalen Johnson because of Brandon Cooks, right? I think that he didn't have any targets last week when Aaron Rodgers wasn't trying to give him the ball. But this week, we know Mills throws it to Brandon Cooks. This is a fact that we know, right? So it's going to be important for that. And out of the backfield, Rex Burkhead, they're going to try to give him the ball on those nice little passes. So I think Jalen Johnson is going to be a guy that's going to be has to be near the line, try to get some tackle for losses, while at the same time trying his best to contain Brandon Cooks.
It's been a consistent refrain through 2 games. Like I mentioned Cole Kmet a moment ago. Darnell Mooney, obviously a huge piece of this for the Bears offense. It hasn't gotten targeted much yet this season. And I love what Justin Fields is saying about it. I love what Darnell Mooney is saying about it. Neither one expressing discomfort or being impatient about it, regardless of all the questions, the onslaught of inquiry that comes about Fields to Mooney, and everyone being very excited about that. In my opinion, Cassie, this is a game where the Bears find a variety of ways, whether it is jet sweeps, the run game, the screen game, getting Darnell Mooney involved. And it can be tough against the Lovie Smith defense to take deep shots like the Bears have early on, but there's going to be some ways within the route tree for them to try to feature Darnell Mooney a bit more than they have.
Building off of that, I'm going to go plain and simple with Justin Fields. I want to see him throw the ball this week, and I think this is the perfect opportunity against the Texans team who gives up 270 yards per game through the air through the first 2 seasons. I think they know that they need to get Justin Fields more involved in that passing game. They need to build his confidence, even if they don't feel like they've lost faith in it at this point. I think that we're early in the season. This is an opponent that you need to test it again. So Justin Fields is my player to watch. All right, we are just getting started here on Bears Unleashed. Coming up after our first time out, we'll take a look at the Bears defense and what they can expect to face on Sunday at Soldier Field.
Former coach Lovie Smith in town this weekend.
Oh, stress. This should be an exciting game. He knows that defense pretty well. It's going to be, mirror images because they run the same defense. But they're pretty competitive right now as well. Their first 2 games, they lost to Denver and they tied Indy. So it should be a pretty tight game. Coach Eberflus does a good job with them. I know the first week they played pretty well. Green Bay's Green Bay. Aaron Rodgers knows that scheme. He saw it when we were there. So you're not going to do a lot to trick him. It's just They played fast, and there's no quitting those guys. I know that. They played, got hard and got to the football, but it's Green Bay, and they're good.
Welcome back to Bears Unleashed. We just heard from Hall of Famer Brian Urlacher, who played for Lovie Smith. So let's start there. Lovie Smith returning to Soldier Field. What do you think is the lasting impact he's had on the Chicago Bears?
Oh, man, I think it's just that continued grit, right? He was the one that extended it, obviously, with Urlacher and Briggs being there, just kind of having that defense toughness that was there. I said he needs to get a standing ovation. I don't know how they're going to work it in, but I was trying to think, I'm like, this is going to be right. When they say Lovie Smith's name, you would think, even though it's been some years, and Cassie, that they have to appreciate him in some way, shape, or form. I know I do. I still love Lovie Smith. When I was on the radio this week, all they kept talking about was 10 wins. They fired up with 10 wins. And you're like, I know. So I hope they do, right? Because I would want to show him some love. And it'll be interesting to see what happens his first game back coaching.
Agreed. There's a lasting impact. There's a legacy that Lovie Smith left behind here from his time leading the Bears to a Super Bowl berth, leading them to a number of double-digit win seasons. There is a standard. We've heard the term a lot the last few years here. The standard is the standard. But the standard that the current Bears continue to be measured by is the one that Lovie Smith left behind. It was kind of one generation of Bears fans that were passionate about the '85 Bears, and the entire city, the entire sports landscape continues to be. But then you also had that '06 Super Bowl squad that Lovie Smith led there also, and some of those great figures that continue to be a huge part of this city's lineage. So I think there's a fan base that's a little bit removed from that, kind of the next most recent generation of Bears fans that love Lovie Smith and what he established.
9 seasons in Chicago. You mentioned the Super Bowl.
Right.
I think he gets a standing ovation. We'll see what happens at noon. All right, well, let's talk Bears defense right now. They got to Aaron Rodgers 3 times on Sunday. Travis Gibson had 2 sacks. Robert Quinn gets his first of the season. Are you liking how this 4-3 scheme is looking so far?
I am. I mean, I was really worried about how much pressure they were going to be able to get on the quarterback. And there were some moments where I thought to myself, they're not going to have a sack. Like, how are they going to do this? But they've proved me wrong week in and week out. You've seen Travis Gibson get to the ball, right? It's not necessarily about making those moves and getting there within a second or two. It's eventually getting there. Continued pressure to the quarterback. And to me, that has been awesome. When you look at the linebacker play, Nick Morrow has been around places, not necessarily making your tackles for losses that you would like to see, but you have seen him there. And, of course, Roquan also being Roquan through and through. So I think they've done a good job.
And that was a hard test, man, against Aaron Rodgers, against that Green Bay run game. They held up pretty well against the pass. They didn't consistently make Aaron Rodgers uncomfortable, but he's Aaron Rodgers, and it's difficult to do that, especially within the construct of that offensive system. They should be able to continue to grow from that. And I think there's a lot on film this week that they're evaluating that they can see ways to grow, especially against the run. That's got to be something that they continue to look for. And a lot of that can be about communication and how you let one phase of your defense know what's happening to make sure that you're in a position to rally and make the play that's there.
You talk about the running attack from Green Bay, and missed tackles were the key thing from that game. That was just so frustrating, especially from a staff that preaches the hustle, intensity, and tackling in this system. Now they welcome in Damian Pierce, another running back who is the Texans' top rusher. What do you think they're going to see from them, and how do you stop that this week?
Yeah, I mean, you're going to have to, right? I mean, they're going to try to get to 3rd and short, but the problem is that's where the Texans struggle, right? Last game, 5 for 15. First game of the season, they went 3 for 13. So, I mean, that's where they're going to try to get 3rd and short. And so it's a matter of stopping Pierce and not letting him get away with that long run. But to me, I felt like a lot of the issues on the Bears' run defense against the Packers is that you're threatened by the pass, right? It's Aaron Rodgers. So you're not necessarily feeling that way with Mills, even though he's thrown the ball 37 and 38 times respectively in these last 2 games, which is a ton, right? So they're going to try to, I don't know if that's because they were losing in the 4th quarter, so that could be a skewed statistic, but nonetheless, they're going to try to get in 3rd and short, and I think that's what the Bears have to do to stop Pierce in that run game.
It's all still very early. We pay attention to being very early in the development of Justin Fields, and with these young Bears offensive players, very early in the development of this Bears defense being run by Allen Williams. And one thing that's really key in defense that folks don't pay enough attention to is how one portion of the defense, whether it's the front line, the linebackers, the 3rd level with the secondary, can affect the way that the other levels end up operating. I mean, there's 3 of us at the desk right now. Like, if I'm the D-line, you're the linebacker, you're the secondary, we have to work in cohesion. We have to communicate with each other. If I just sit here and just utter some catchphrase like, I'll be back, and then I don't say anything the rest of the show, I'm leaving you guys on an island. There's got to be a little more that comes with that. And I think that's where the Bears defense, it's not just about occasionally penetrating and maybe you make a play. It's not just about I'm playing my portion of the crack toss. You have to be there to say, alert crack, and let your teammates know what's coming. When you echo those calls and everyone can be on the same page, then the entire unit can operate the way they need to. So when you hear me yell alert crack, don't think I'm on some beach in Brazil game because something else is going on. That's because I'm letting you know there's a blocker who's coming down trying to take you out, and that's where the Bears defense has to grow.
Let's talk about the rookies and Kyler Gordon, because he got picked on by Aaron Rodgers.
Yep.
Yeah, Aaron Rodgers basically took him to school in week 2, and he knew that was going to happen. He's currently playing nickel and a little bit outside. Do you think he can still handle playing those two positions, switching a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, you're going to learn every single week, right? He was my player to watch last week, and because of that very reason, you knew Aaron Rodgers.
That's why Rodgers attacked him, actually. He was
watching
Bears Unleashed like everyone else should.
Like, that guy Gabe.
Take this, Gabe. Watch this.
He told me to watch Kyler Gordon. But no, I mean, the reality is this, right? You expect these bumps and bruises with rookies, right, Cassie? You know what you're getting when you get a guy like that to play a coveted position in the league, a difficult position to play where you're trying to follow around some of the best athletes in the world and wide receivers. You know, and obviously they believe in their guys in Green Bay wholeheartedly, despite their lack of production in the first couple of games. So, yeah, it is difficult. Will he get better? Yeah, it's his rookie year. When we're talking about Kyler Gordon next year or the year after, and we're talking about that next contract, hopefully we'll be talking about a few interceptions and his growth over these last few seasons.
And we'll see how long he even has to end up staying in the slot. You know, he was more of an outside corner in college. What the Bears defense needs from him right now is to be that slot corner, that nickel corner. And I do think there's no doubt he's going to continue to grow in that regard. And it was Aaron Rodgers and, frankly, the entire sort of Green Bay offensive system that targeted Kyler Gordon and some of the Bears' youth there on the edge. That's where they got gashed quite a bit, both in the run and in the pass. But when you got Aaron Rodgers threading needles and attacking you a bunch, Kyler Gordon made a few plays in that game. He certainly missed some plays in the game as well. It'll be an experience he can grow from.
He had that big pass breakup on the Packers' first drive that obviously held them to a field goal. All right, time for another break. When we come back, we'll take a look behind the numbers. Stay with us.
With Montgomery on 1st and 10, is running back in a hole, and then he's off with a nice stiff arm, and it's a foot race down the sideline. Jackson in pursuit, Reed in pursuit, he's gone to the house. 80-yard touchdown run. Wow!
We'll take more of that on Sunday. That was the last time the Bears played the Texans in 2020. The 36-7 win was kicked off by that David Montgomery touchdown run. Welcome back. It is now time for the BetRivers over-under. So we got a couple numbers for you. First, through 2 games, both the Bears and Texans average 14.5 points per game. Do you think they'll score over/under 40 total points on Sunday?
I'm going to say under.
Yeah.
Lovie's defense is good. The Bears haven't necessarily been scoring a ton. So I think either one of the two teams is probably going to be under 10 points. So I'm going to say under.
I'll take the under on that also. I mean, even if we see some run game success from the Bears, as we anticipate, as has been the case, especially in week 2, it can be hard to still put touchdowns on the board when you're running the rock if you're not quite sure how do you have the precision inside the red zone to actually put the ball in the end zone. So maybe a big game for Cairo Santos. I think there's going to be yards. Points are going to be harder to come by. I'll take the under, Cassie.
I'm also going with the under. We have learned just take the unders with this team until they prove us wrong so far.
Right.
And 2 strong defenses. They need to prove that they can have the offenses to back it up. I'm going under 40 points on Sunday. All right, number 2. The Texans defense has allowed an average of almost 450 yards per game this season. So that sets up Justin Fields to have a huge day on Sunday. Will he throw for over/under 250 yards against the Texans?
Strictly passing? Oh, I'll go under on strictly passing. I think total yards, I would take the over. On 250 passing, I'll take the under because of the defense itself. It sort of lends itself to having to take a patient, methodical approach, the deep safeties, the cover 2. But once you get down to it, though, as precise as he can be, I think there's going to be a higher volume of passes. And I think the yardage will end up being good, probably as high as to the season. I'm going to go under 250, though, Gabe.
Nah, I'm going a little sexier. I'm going to say over. You know what I'm hoping for is some big plays, guys. Some big plays with his arm. I want to see a couple of deep balls, maybe. Yeah, just a couple of deep balls and maybe like a nice little quick pass to Pettis that turns into something that's big. So I think 2 big plays then contribute to the over 250.
I'm going under on this one, too. He only has 191 yards through 2 games so far. I want to see Darnell Mooney break out. I want to see Cole Kmet break out. They were all talking about having these huge seasons coming off what they had last year. So I'm still waiting to see that. They need to prove that to me. But what do you think about the over/under 450 total yards? That's a big number for the Bears.
Huge number, yeah. I think that's a bit
we have to
much.
look up our stats and see the last time that happened.
That's asking a lot.
We'll get back to you on that one next week. All right, coming up after our final timeout, we'll tell you the one word that will define the Bears and Texans Sunday at Soldier Field. Stay with us. After the Bears and Texans game is over, switch over to My 50 for Bears Post-Game Live. We'll break down the game for 90 minutes and we'll carry all of the press conferences live. Welcome back to Bears Unleashed, brought to you by IGS Energy, and it's time for the Miller Lite Blitz. Hit me with one word that will define the Bears and Texans game. Who's going first?
I'll go first. My word is echo.
Echo.
Whether it's on defense, whether it's on offense, make sure that everybody knows exactly what the call is and how you have to run it as a unit, Gabe.
I love that. My word is perseverance. You always dealt with adversity, but sometimes you got to bounce back, just
True.
like my people in Puerto Rico, man.
That's right.
Shout out to y'all over there, for
No
sure.
doubt.
And my word is finish. Finish tackles. I don't want to see any more missed tackles or not as many this week. All right, that is it for this week's edition of Bears Unleashed. Join us every Friday night at 9:30. Noon kick Sunday for Texans Bears. See you there. Good night, everyone.
Have to get a little.